the beauty of this dynamic is that the greater degree to which I'm able to show up for myself, to love myself, it enables me to show up for her, right, as the kind of partner that I want to be. Welcome to the Enso Project. This is a podcast for people engaging in the never-ending process of expansion and growth. So the purpose of this podcast is to expand and grow through awareness, introspection, and stillness. We fundamentally understand that relative to all there is to know, we know relatively nothing. So with this in mind, we will consider and reconsider interesting perspectives, ideologies, and strategies for the purpose of self-actualization. Today we're going to talk about marriage. Why are we talking about marriage? Something that we've actually, spent a little bit of time discussing already on this show. But I think it's especially relevant today because this is my last podcast as a bachelor.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, the next podcast I will be a married man. And so naturally I'm interested in learning from the experiences of others and reflecting on the experiences that I have already observed, right? And so that's kind of our plan for this podcast. But Josiah, what's up, man? How's it going?
It's going all right. Yeah, marriage is a very interesting concept that I like to observe and talk about, and I feel I have a unique perspective on it.
I agree.
And so what's going on is I want to talk about it.
Let's
talk about how you feel about getting married coming up pretty soon, and anything you want to disclose as a bachelor. This would not be the time to do that.
Okay, glad we got that established. All right, I'd like to break into the questions because usually we don't really use questions that much on this show, but I think these are really good, and I think that we'll have some fun working through them. So the first one is this. What is the most significant lesson you've learned from observing other marriages, and how, in your case, how have you applied it to your own marriage? And in my case, it would be like, how do I plan to apply it to my marriage?
Yeah, so a lot of questions in there are, part A, part B, sub-questions. But the first one is, I think, what have I learned from other marriages? Mm-hmm. And I think what I've learned is that we all bring in our experience of marriage into our marriage in some way. And it's funny because we talked about this earlier, but how, we learn from experience, and what makes us very unique as humans is that we can learn from the experience of others.
Right.
And it can be, really, it can save us time. It can mitigate the risk. And so I think what I've seen in other marriages is that there are a lot of people who, myself included, at some point in my own marriage, did not really understand or take the insight from the experience with marriage that I had into my marriage to maybe save myself time or mitigate risk.
So naturally, I'm improvising here, right? And it makes me think about why do we get married? Why? I think growing up, I was like, why in the world would anyone get married?
Yeah.
Just can't see you witness some not so perfect marriages, and you think like, this is rough. Why do people sign up for this? And then, like exactly what happened to me, you find somebody that life looks worse without them.
Yeah.
Right. And someone that, you can really see building something with, and somebody that makes you better, and that's like just incredibly attractive, I think. So naturally, it changes the perspective. You have a new paradigm, and in this new paradigm, you start thinking about all of the possibilities that didn't exist, at least not in your conscious awareness, prior to beginning thinking this way. So can you like recall back for me? Do you remember the seedlings of like why you decided to get married? And I'm like kind of reflecting and observing on Rachel, and obviously I just shared a little bit about it, but I'm happy to share more also.
Yeah. I mean, like any beautiful man, I just wanted a nice wedding. So that's why I got married. No, I'm joking. Why? Let's see. Why I got married, or why I thought it was worth the attempt, and that is a daily decision. The concept of, to me, interdependence, where you believe in yourself as an individual, and that you could achieve your goals. However, there's someone that could also help you get there faster, can save you time, can help you be more efficient, can help you enjoy yourself while you do it. And also someone you wouldn't mind learning a thing or two from, expanding your skill set, expanding yourself, your mindset, your behavior, right? So, like, for example, I was an introvert. I was not a nerd, but I was just like a bookworm. I just, I was very straight, to the point. And my wife was not, and still kind of isn't in some ways. And
I wouldn't call her an introvert.
She's not. Yeah, you that'd be accurate. But over time, I've picked up, or we've meshed, and I think that is because of our interdependence. Like I said, I talked about this earlier, but I've been in conditions where I needed to be more of an extrovert to actually achieve what it is that I was trying to achieve. So I was able to then, this is going to sound weird, but think to myself, well, what would Rama do, right? Or how would she approach this? And, I'm not speaking for her, but I've seen her do some things that, I know I'm like, that is, really something that I do. There's a concept. It's called transactive memory. And, basically you have it in couples, but it's really a working relationship where there's a merger of thoughts and ideas, and the more time you spend with one another, when you're in certain conditions, you behave in a way that's needed, that was derived from spending time with that person. So you really get the best of both worlds, or you approach things that way. So yeah, I didn't know this at the time, but I really wanted to leverage transactive memory. So that's
the power of transactive memory.
Right.
Behold. So I think, we're both framing it in similar ways in terms of this person has something to teach me, right? I could learn something from this person. We can grow together. We can build something together that we may not be able to achieve independently. And that's a very strategic frame of reference. We're both, strategic thinkers, but I also don't want to neglect the feeling component in there too. The quality of life, I have no intention of being miserable in my lifetime, right?
Right.
I want to do everything that I can to improve the quality of my experience. I think that by investing in the quality of my experience, I also benefit so many other people, because I think just more pleasant to be around, right? When I'm
Right.
having a higher quality experience. So I like that. I also, as you were talking, you made me think of, there's an organization here in Dallas called New Friends, New Life.
Mm-hmm.
And they are major advocates for, ending human sex trafficking. And I have a lot of admiration for their organization. One of the things that they say in their rehabilitation program when they're helping these women who have been trafficked, oftentimes for years and years on end, and they're helping them learn new skills, adapt to a different way of life. They talk about, they call them, their members. They'd say, we love our members until they learn to love themselves. Mm. And I love that. That resonates with me. And I think in a way that also resembles, not that Rachel took me on as a project at all, but I think through seeing Rachel's ability to love people for who they are, right where they're at, without needing them to be anything other than exactly what they are, it was instrumental in teaching me. And I give Rachel a lot of credit for, I think, teaching things that, teaching me important lessons when she didn't know she was teaching. Mm-hmm. She was just being who she is. But that it helped me love myself, helped me learn to love myself. And that the beauty of this dynamic is that the greater degree to which I'm able to show up for myself, to love myself, it enables me to show up for her, mm-hmm. right, as the kind of partner that I want to be. So, I think that was super fascinating. That's still a dynamic in our relationship, and I do everything in my power to reciprocate that, mm-hmm. To love her so comprehensively that it's easier, it's just more natural, right, for her to love herself. Mm-hmm. And I think, and I'll tie this up, but another benefit of that is that one of the first things I noticed about Rachel in our relationship dynamic was that we had this common core. There were these values and constructs that we really resonated on, and I think it may have a lot to do with like kind of birth order psychology, also our experiences in our really formative years. They were very, very similar. Mm-hmm. We had blended families, and we were having to navigate these complex social dynamics like inside the family structure, and we both learned to do that. And we both had scars from that. Yeah. Right? So we understood like instinctively where those scars were, and we could be gentle around that. And that was hugely beneficial. Now, we also, aside from that, we had wildly different life experiences. Like in our teen years and through college, we were just involved in different things. Mm-hmm. And we both met after college, and after I was out of grad school. And so it was just this interesting dynamic of like having kind of a doppelganger from the cradle. However, our life experience being so drastically different that we also had some striking ways that we were different. Right. We were unique from each other. And Rachel's lens through which she viewed the world was different from mine. And granted, this may not be saying a whole lot, because I think that was one of the earliest things I noticed, like in my childhood, was my brain kind of worked a bit differently. Mm-hmm. And at first it was frightening, and this was just like, how can I pretend to fit in? How can I pretend to think like other people? And later in life, I was like, you know what? Maybe this is okay. And then, hey, maybe this is a benefit. Maybe I can leverage this. It's like a progression. But Rachel and I weren't different in the ways that I had become accustomed to. We were different in a whole nother perspective. Yeah. And that was like, that was so valuable to me. Yeah. I was like, she has a wildly different vantage point, and if I can cultivate this relationship and value her insight and perspective, then my perspective grows. Right. So I can benefit from hers.
It's complementary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with some of the concepts that you're actually highlighting here. And I think the way that I'm speaking about it comes from years of experience and like actually seeing the transactive memory.
Right.
But
which reminds me of like entanglement.
Yeah.
When you talk about it, I don't.
yeah, entanglement. There's enmeshment, I guess, would be
Yeah.
another term. But yeah, I can see that like earlier on, how you are. There's this person that shows you yourself, and there is a value in that. It doesn't always come across that way, but they show you certain elements of yourself that you don't necessarily see.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes don't want to see.
Don't want to see, right? Don't want to see. And when that happens, you do have to make a decision. Do I trust this person with the way I feel about myself? And
It's vulnerable.
yeah, it's vulnerable. And they're really a guide. They're like a self-exploration guide. They can't really do the work for you, but they can highlight the work that needs to be done.
Gosh, how frustrating is it when they try?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, for the guide and the recipient of that guidance, I think it can be wildly uncomfortable for both, for everyone involved.
Yeah. And also I think it can be detrimental, looking back on my experience. What I've learned is that not that we're asking what I've learned, but I'm just going to throw it out there.
I am curious. I would
yeah,
like to know. Yeah.
There's so much that I've learned. But I've learned that, this person is at their best for me, a co-pilot. They're a mirror into self. I get to actually see who I am, and what I'm becoming. And this person's gonna, tell you if they truly love you. I think they will tell you, because they also feel, in some ways, the same way, like they see themselves in you,
Right.
and your reflection to them. And if they don't, to your point earlier, if they don't really love or accept or appreciate themselves, there's going to be a hostility when you invariably in your being just show them who they are.
Right. Not without trying.
Without trying.
Not trying to
Yeah.
do that. It just happens.
It just happens. And there's going to be a pushback. There's going to be an adverse reaction. And I think if you're doing your best to be a healthy person, then the healthiest thing you can do as a spouse or partner is not take it so personally when they react adversely to what you are showing them in your being.
Because I just imagine in the context of a marriage, any relationship, it'd be easy to take that, offensively.
It's so much easier to do two things. One, attack the person, the mirror, right? Break the mirror.
Break the mirror.
Freaking mirror. I look fat every time I look at you.
Broken mirror.
Yeah, kick it, break it,
Yeah.
and that removes the problem.
Temporarily.
And the second thing is easy to do is, because we're the mirror, and the mirror is, we're conscious and aware. We can lose ourselves in that moment and take it personally and get upset and kick back, right? Or distort.
Right.
Imagine if a mirror, like if you looked in the mirror, you didn't like what you saw, you said something crazy, right? Or you did something crazy, and then the mirror distorted your face.
Right.
How freaky would that be,
Ooh,
right?
That would be. Yeah.
That would be scary, very scary. You wouldn't trust that mirror, right? And that is what, in a lot of ways, that's what happens when we react personally, like we take things personally.
Yeah.
When the person that we're showing themselves to takes it personally as well. We distort right? And then next time they're not going to trust what we're showing them, and they're really not going to trust our being in a certain way.
I feel like that is such useful information to have in the beginning of a marriage. Just to be aware that that could possibly happen. And in all likelihood, it is very likely to happen, to occur. It's really just a matter of time. But how you respond to it can impact potentially the most important thing in the context of your relationship, which is the level of trust.
Trust. Can I trust that this person is showing me myself and they're not doing it to hurt me or to distort who I am?
Right.
Right? Because that's just going to happen. Like, you're going to show that person who they are. No matter, as long as you're going to be with them, you're going to show them who they are. Their conditions are going to present themselves. You're going to react or respond in certain ways. They're going to react and respond in certain ways. You're going to reflect that response or reaction, and so are they. And, that cannot be, it could be accelerated, right, or decelerated. It could be mitigated, right, or aggravated, but it can't be stopped.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel a weight, like a gravity around that. I think that it definitely resonates as true with me, and I bet a lot of people will resonate with that.
Yeah.
It's also the perfect segue into question number 2, which is, in what ways do you think marriage challenges or enhances personal growth?
Well, both. It does both.
Yeah.
I think as individuals, we're naturally inherently competitive in some way. And then we also are inherently adaptive. So, it can be challenging when you say something as a spouse and you're bringing all your knowledge into it. And this person says, no, that doesn't really sound right. And it's a person that you trust, right? They're showing you don't know as much as you think you know. There's more to this. There's a new perspective to be had. What an opportunity, right? To look into the mirror and see your shortcomings. That is challenging, but will you respond to the challenge?
Right.
And, so that occurs, right? And then if we choose to respond to the challenge, then I think it inherently leads to adaptation and therefore enhancement of who we are.
Right. AKA personal growth.
Right. And that leads you to who you become.
Right.
I think you become a better person when you can take advantage of those constants, those inevitabilities that occur in a marriage. When this person shows you, you don't have it together the way you think you do. Tough crap, right?
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
Right.
They're showing you the truth or an accurate reflection of yourself. You're fortunate to have that every single day when you wake up, as long as they're being responsible with how they're showing it to you. Yeah. That's a great thing.
Absolutely.
It may not feel like it in the moment.
It's a catalyst.
Yes.
I
for
think
enhancement,
that's the essence of this question. In what ways do you think marriage challenges or enhances personal growth? I think it's going to induce change.
Yes.
And so, are we going to leverage that, or are we going to let it, subdue us or defeat us in some way? Have a maladaptive effect, which that we can see that a lot. Let's end with this question. This precious little podcast is so short. It's okay.
It's the wedding to the marriage.
Right.
Short event.
And sweet. Yeah. Okay, here it is. How do you define love within a marriage? And what do you think that, and do you think that definition evolves over time? Love is just a challenging thing to define in and of itself, I think, because it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah, I think I think there's a bit of an existential vacuum in all of us to some degree, uh, and I think love. When I think about that transactive memory, that interdependence, it allows us to approach that vacuum. I think in a relatively healthy way, if we are responsible with what we take on, how we expand or contract as individuals, with respect to that union. Because, with transactive memory, right, it's a memory system or mechanism through which a couple collectively encodes, stores, and retrieves knowledge. And if you're not growing that as an individual and invariably a couple, well then, how are you really approaching conditions that require you to love yourself or, the other person? Like, if you really don't spend the time really getting to know your spouse without distractions.
Yeah. Which I think this is pretty rampant in our society.
Yeah.
It's kind of like distracted marriage. Reminds me of like old-timey marriages where it was truly a strategic choice. Like,
yes.
This is a business decision, and the love is like, if it's there, great. If it's not, that's a detail. But I think that still persists, like, in our society. It's just dressed in different clothes.
Mm-hmm. There are plenty of arranged marriages.
Right.
In our culture, arranged by circumstance.
Arranged by circumstance.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and this might be a good place for us to kind of wrap up. But I'm gonna go out on a limb by attempting to define love. Mm-hmm. And this is a thought. This is not a widely accepted definition, but kind of like a distillation of a bunch of different ideas. I think, to me, love is the force that changes things. It has a really unique and honestly awe-inspiring ability to transform people and things, relationships, situations, organizations, teams, whatever it is. And so from that perspective, the question is, do you think the definition of love evolves over time? I think, how could it not?
Yeah, how could it not?
In and of itself, it is the force that causes that evolution. So, of course, it's changing. It's fluid. Mm-hmm. It was never one thing.
Right.
So, and I think that's what's so special about love, and especially a marriage that is permeated by love, is that it is constantly transforming the individuals within its grasp. And and if we're open to that, right, then that could be a lovely ride. But it could also be really frightening.
It is certainly going to be an interesting ride. I don't know if it's always going to be lovely. I don't know if it's always going to be frightening, but it'll definitely be interesting when to your point. Yes, we're preparing to evolve as fast or as frequent as the actual conditions that require evolution are presented.
Mm.
And that is as natural as a single-celled organism.
Right.
That's everything. We divide to multiply. And that is what is happening in a marriage. Like, you take everything that is you, and you in terms of what you bring to the table, and you divide that. And you invest that into another person, and then invariably what it does is multiply your impact, right, across time.
across time. Boom.
Yeah.
Perfect note to end on. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. No, that's excellent. I hope you enjoyed this mini episode on marriage, and we'll be coming back to you, and we'll both be married men.
Congrats.
Thanks for listening.
The Enzo Project is brought to you by Bolt Human Capital and Noon Holdings. Edited by ELE. You can find the Enzo Project on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Music, the song Full Bloom by Jewel and Nuamina. You can find them wherever you listen to your music.